Thanks for listening to the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry, here to help educate, motivate, and put you on the right path to take control of your health through weekly discussions on topics in the medical field, public health arena, and in your community. And now your host, Dr. Barry.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry. I'm your host, Dr. Barry Pierre, your favorite board-certified internist, founder of drbarrypierre.com, as well as the CEO of Pierre Medical Consulting, helping you empower yourself with better health with the #1 podcast for patient advocacy, affirmation, and education. And this week, we bring you an episode, a solo episode this week with yours truly to discuss physician burnout on a personal level and talk about my personal opinions on the subject matter. If you've been around for the past 3 weeks, if you're not, please go ahead and start on episode 124, starting with Dr. Nicole and leading to soon to be Dr. Kessie Joseph and soon to be Dr. Aprylle Thompson, as we talked about physician burnout on the level from where did it first start, and then we started with like, hey, how are medical students dealing with a topic, right? Because I think a lot of times when we hear about physician burnout, we think it's something that happens to someone, 5 to 10 years into practice. And we're learning very quickly that even at the medical student level, they are experiencing burnout at a rate that, unfortunately and honestly, is very scary, right? Because again, they haven't even really hit the rough patch. I like to say medical school is tough, but residency, I think, is a lot tougher. And then real life, puts it, the bonus on the cake, right? So it's definitely something that it is definitely worrisome that as a medical student, they are starting experiencing these feelings that the physicians who've been out for 10, 20 years and who are just frustrated and kind of fed up, I would like to say, with the system are starting to experience as well. So I wanted to kind of give my personal opinions, one, because people kept asking, like, hey, Dr. Pierre, what do you think about physician burnout, and what's your personal opinion? And most importantly, like, have you gone through a patch where you're like, yeah, you know what, I'm almost done. Like, I want to get out of here. So I definitely want to add my 2 cents this week on the episode before we bring on a couple more guests to finish this topic of discussion. And remember, if you have not had a chance, go ahead, subscribe to the podcast. Again, definitely, especially if this is your first time listening, leave us a 5-star review. Tell us how you think about the episodes. And again, remember, start on episode 124 with Dr. Nicole and just kind of lead your way on this amazing series of physician burnout and the discussion that we're having. One of the sponsors for the Lunch and Learn Community Podcast is the Lunch and Learn Community Store, where you can find t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, stickers, and wristbands with the motto, empower yourself for better health. Remember, 50% of all proceeds will go to the 5-Star Scholarship Foundation, where we give out college scholarships to deserving high school seniors across the country. Thus far, we have given out over 20 deserving scholarships to students across the country. So again, 50% of the proceeds will be blessed to the 5-Star Scholarship Foundation. And today you can get the coupon code LUNCH20. You can get 20% off your purchase, and you support these high school students across the country. Again, the Lunch and Learn Community Store is at shop.drbarrypierre.com, and the coupon code is LUNCH20. Hey, what's going on, Lunch and Learn Community? Dr. Barry here, of course. So I wanted to really talk on this topic, one, because they asked me to do it. I wanted me to talk and kind of give my personal opinion with a topic that we're going on. This is actually the 4th episode on this series of physician burnout, and I think we got like at least 1 or 2 more left to do to really kind of hit home just the impact. Because again, the Lunch and Learn community, I talk about, empowering yourself for better health, and I talk about how physicians and those in the health community really are not immune to the need to do it. And a lot of times when we talk about, taking care of others, a lot of times we don't take care of ourselves, and physicians are notorious for putting themselves last when it comes to, taking care of their own needs. So with this topic, like a physician burnout, right? With this, and again, if you have not, if this is your first time listening, check out episode 124 and 125 and then 126, of course, because we kind of talk about what physician burnout is, kind of in general, and what we've been doing is just really kind of touching base with, the different levels of being a physician and how they're affected by physician burnout. So I wanted to talk, just how I'm familiar with it, and have kind of come to terms with this important discussion on physician burnout that has really played such a role in not only the career choices I've made, but also the career trajectory in and of itself. So as a medical student, you understand that it's going to be a lot of work, and they tell you it's going to be a lot of work, right? It's no surprise, no shock there. But one thing that they didn't really tell you about, they don't prepare you for as a medical student, is just the level of strife that is there just in our profession. And when we talk about physician burnout, it's one of those. It's probably one of the common factors that are associated with why physicians aren't happy with what they're doing, because they go into it with these expectations, like yes, I want to save the world, and they realize that yes, they can still save the world, but there's a lot more that goes into it. Again, I tell my friends who are like musically inclined, like, yes, you can love music, but understand that this is a music business. And I think for what happens for a lot of my physician colleagues and, of course, medical students and residents is they don't realize the level of business that's really associated with taking care of somebody. And it can be very disheartening when what they want to do or what they feel is right to do isn't usually in the best interest in the business standpoint. Because we take care of patients, right? We take care of patients. That's what they are. They are our patients. They're the ones we love. They're the ones we want to take care of and see do well. But in the business of health, right, they are our customers. So when it comes to taking care of the customers and how do we take care of the customers and make sure our customers are well taken care of, a lot of times what you want to do for your customer, right, isn't necessarily what's best for them. And for a lot of us, we deal with that struggle that I want to go this route, right? I want to be able to take care of my patients in this certain way, but it's not feasible to do so, whether it be the fact that financially, right, I can't do it, or socially, there's social factors that I can't do it, or institutional factors that don't allow me to practice the way I want to practice. I remember as a medical student, I remember being kind of naive to the fact, because again, I was still in that, and I'm still in, right? I'm still in that stage where I just want to help people. I want to help people. I want to care for people. I want to take care of them. And starting to, get in touch with, older physicians who, they were seasoned, right? So they were like, yeah, that's great and all, but what else are you going to do? Like, how are you going to pay for that? How are you going to do this? And all of a sudden, thoughts that were never, even brought up, right? Like never even brought to the imagination, right? Becoming interjected into your pathway, right? Because now you're starting to think about things that you never thought you had to think about. And it's interesting when we talk about as a medical student and as you're kind of deciding what you want to do for the rest of your life, because I'm not sure if those in the learning community understand. As a medical student, you have about a couple years, right, to kind of, do the medical student thing. And then you have about a year and change to kind of decide what you want to do for the rest of your life. Now, for some people, it's easy. Again, I remember going to school, understanding that I wanted to do, primary care, outpatient medicine. Like I knew that was what I wanted to do. So it wasn't difficult for me. My choices were pretty similar as far as either family medicine, internal medicine, maybe peds, right? Like I knew I wanted to do something in those three. But there are a lot of people who go to school and have no clue what they want to do or how they want to do it. So you're already that stress level is already starting to build up because you don't really have as much time as you think you have to choose the career of your life, right? So you have to choose that career. But while you're in the process of choosing that career, there are many different factors that you didn't even have to think about. One, like, where are you going to be working at? Like, how much are they going to be paying you? Is that lifestyle conducive to, having a family or traveling or whatever your vice is? Those are thoughts you're starting to think about and being interjected in, unfortunately. And I always tell people, when we think about Yelp and those types of review sites, it wasn't made for positive reviews, right? It was made to say like, hey, I got a problem with this business and I need to let you know about it, right? Most of the review sites have been kind of originated from that concept. So what tends to happen, the same thing happened in medicine, right? So of course the people who are doing well and who are happy in medicine, they weren't really as vocal about being happy as medicine, which because they probably didn't think they had to. But the people who had the negative thoughts, the people who were like, oh my God, I can't believe I got to do this over and over and over again. Like those are the people we tended to hear about from the most. So you had these people kind of interjecting their thoughts, and especially on that impressionable stage and understanding that what they say, holds so much value that all of a sudden now we're making career life choices because of what someone said before you. A perfect example is the amount of people, and it's crazy because I still hear it now. The amount of people who will discourage my female colleagues who want to do like surgery, right? Because they say, oh, you can't have a life if you're going to be a surgeon. And the amount of people, again, they don't discredit the men, right? And we all know how that bias goes. They don't discredit the men on that. They always discredit the women. They always say like, oh, you can't have a family if you want to be a surgeon. And the amount of times I've heard my female colleagues say, oh, I didn't want to do this specialty because I wanted a family. It's such a disheartening fact because, again, remember, they have no clue about that specialty. All they know is from what people have told them. And unfortunately, again, the people who told them usually tell them in these negative, connotations, and they've painted such a bleak picture that you have, scores of people who don't go into professions because of what someone said about them. Oh, so again, imagine again if I was primary care and I'm gung-ho primary care, but all I heard about was from people who told me how terrible primary care was. Maybe I don't choose primary care, right? Like maybe I say, you know what? If primary care is that bad, I need to stay away from it. So that's what was happening, right? That was happening now. Like that's what's happening, and that starts early, right? Again, when with episode 125 and 26, you heard our two medical students kind of talk about, just kind of dealing with the strife of the stress of medicine and, dealing with expectations that weren't their own and, being put in positions where it became too overwhelming. So as a medical student, I was pretty rock solid, right? Like I kind of knew like, yes, I want to do medicine. I want to do outpatient clinical medicine. So I'm fine, right? So I'm pretty unshakable. I didn't care what people said. It didn't matter, right? If they thought primary care was weak or they thought primary care didn't pay enough. That wasn't ever my motivation behind it. So those words couldn't affect me. But what would happen, right? And again, when we fast forward and we get to my residency, and as a resident, I'm doing well. But again, as a resident, I'm still like, yep, outpatient medicine. Like that's the thing to do because that's what I want to do, right? Because that's what I love. And fortunately, they didn't dissuade me as a resident, right? They didn't dissuade me to go away from outpatient medicine, but they also didn't encourage as well. Like I tell people all the time, as a resident, I probably did 2/3, right? Maybe, about 70% of my training was done inside the hospital. 70%, which is a lot. And I didn't get that many opportunities to do outpatient clinical medicine but I knew it was something I always wanted to do, so it didn't matter, right? It wasn't going to deter my thoughts and my wants. So despite not having as much experience in outpatient clinical medicine, I still went forth. And I still did that. And it was, again, a happy decision. I knew it was because, again, even though I remember my first couple of years where I'd have my book, I'd have my phone, I'd constantly be looking up medications, be looking up like, oh, what type of cream do I put on for here? And again, I had no shame. I would tell my patients like, oh, give me a second. I need to look up the dosage. I had no problem, right? My patients let me, so it didn't matter to them. They knew I was fresh out of residency, so they knew I was learning along the way. But they trusted me with their healthcare, so that was fine. And then I started really kind of getting what the business of medicine was like. Because I went to work for a company, actually for a hospital, who had some outpatient practices. So I went to work for them and started realizing that there was a lot of decisions that were being made that wasn't really in the best interest for the patient, but really for the best interest of the organization. And it was conflicting because, again, remember, as a pre-med, I was like, oh, I want to save people, I want to help people, I want to care. I do because I want to care. We all know what the personal statements read like. I want to do it because I care. But here I was being put in positions where I was almost having to battle with my employer of what we should do for the patient, right? And then here I was also being put in positions where I was having to battle the patient's insurance for what I want to do for my patient, right? And my outpatient clinical docs already know this very well of the amount of work and stress that's related to dealing with insurance companies when trying to get the best possible care for your patient. It's a daily process. Some people estimate that your productivity goes down by like 20 to 30%, like in a regular outpatient office, just because you're dealing with the outside stressors of an insurance company denying claims and not approving authorizations. And again, for them, it's a business model, right? Because they understand if 20% of the docs out there get their claims denied, right, or their orders not approved, that's going to save them billions of dollars a year, right? So it's a business model that's baked into the fact that they just don't approve some of the stuff they don't approve. So I'm here dealing with that level of stress, dealing with that level of concern as far as like what should I do? What's the best for my patient? And then I had my employer like, well, no, you should do this, you should do that, right? So again, we were starting to kind of butt heads, and then I started realizing that I was in a position where I was an asset to a company that didn't really thought I was an asset to their company, right? Which is a funny position to be in, right? Like when like you should be really like treat me better because hey, I am the physician. I am the reason. Literally, I'm literally the reason why the lights on in this building right now, right? Because again, if you don't have, and I was the only physician in the office. So again, if you don't have a physician in the office, then you don't have a manager in the office. You don't have office staff in the office, right? You don't have all the medical tools. Like I'm literally the reason why the lights are on in that building. But you would make it the way they would make it seem as if I was just some accessory portion. And I think that's where physicians, especially, I won't speak for all of the physicians, right, who feel burnout or are feeling burnout, right? But I think that's where a lot of the stress is kind of being derived because, you put all this work in, right? You have all these sleepless nights, you have all those long hours in the library, and then you run into a system that makes it seem like, no, you're just one little cog that can easily be replaced, right? You're just one, little a pin here that we could just put somebody else in and keep it moving. And I think that's the disheartening aspect of medicine, as you're getting older, right? Especially when you're not especially when you're not walking the light that you need to be walking. And I know a lot of physicians who are in this same position, and this is, regardless of the specialty, regardless of the pay, right? And I tell people all the time, like, medicine is not the thing you go in for pay anyways, right? Imagine you spend, almost like 12, 13 years of your life, right? Like studying for something, right? So, and trust me, the amount that they pay doesn't equal to the amount of work that you put in. So it's not for the money, right? So again, because this is across specialties, right? There's people in specialties who get paid $500,000 a year, and they're miserable, absolutely miserable with having to go to work, absolutely miserable with having to kind of deal with the day-to-day stressors that medicine has placed them in, right? And for reasons that don't have to deal with the patient, right? Just stuff that's just kind of above their hands that they can't even affect or control. And when you get into a position where you can't affect or control, what's happening, and stuff is just kind of happening to you, right? That beats you down on a daily. And trust me, I'm in a few physician groups, right, who feel this way, right? I'm in some physician groups that like, outer careers, like it's almost like hey, outside of the physician career, like what else can I do, right? And you should see the amount of people who are in these groups, right? The amount of physicians who are in these groups who are looking for a way out of medicine. I saw an article recently that talked about how majority of physicians would not recommend their family members go into the practice of medicine, right? Which is sad. Again, I would tell my daughters and son all the time, like, hey, please come join me, become a doctor, right? Because I know that there are certain factors that are at play that affect us, right? I know there are certain factors that attribute to us, wanting to be tired, wanting to be burnt out. So, and there's ways to get around that, right? And I think that was one of the big things that I was very happy, especially with our last two guests, when they talked about how, like, in the school, like, they're instituting, processes to try to get around the fact that, like, hey, we know we have a system that routinely beats you up and beats you down, and discredits you, and makes you become depressed. We know that, right? Because again, it's that, and I think that's the big thing. This is not a secret anymore. The system of health care is almost kind of made to beat people down, right? And you have to install measures to avoid that. In residency, we call that resident wellness, right? You have to install measures to avoid the beat down, right? You have to install measures to let your residents know, like, hey, we are here for you. Please relax. Please go to sleep. Like, please do these things that any common person would probably do, but because of the system that you're in, right? Because of the healthcare institution that you're in, you probably don't realize that those opportunities are afforded to you, or you probably realize that if you try to take some of those opportunities, someone else may try to discredit you, which is crazy, right? Again, we physicians and mental health, that's a whole long discussion. But because we don't take care of ourselves, right, we deal with some of these stressors that we don't have to deal with. So I think especially when we talk about, just in my position, right, where I'm like, hey, yeah, I don't like where I'm at right now. I don't like my job. And again, it's not like I didn't like my patients. I love my patients. But the position that my job was putting me in was something that I realized I had to go. And now I was very fortunate. And again, I've talked about this in the past, working with my coach and, my business coach, and who, helped kind of guide and kind of open doors and open just a different mindset associated with what healthcare was. And, kind of help, turn my life around and, almost do like a complete 180 on just this process of burnout, right? Like, again, because at this time right now, I'm the happiest I've ever been in medicine, right? Again, and it's funny, right? Because again, it's 2019, so I'm only 5 years out of medicine. I'm only 5 years out of residency, right? So I'm not a seasoned vet who's been around 10, 15 years. I'm 5 years out, but I was already experiencing symptoms of burnout that quickly. And just again, if you catch episode 125, 126, that now medical students are feeling that burn as well too, right? So we understand that this isn't a process that's going to only affect us after you've been in for 20 years. It's not the case anymore. And you're having more and more people decide away from this profession, right? Or you're having more and more people decide away from certain specialties because they don't want that risk of burnout, or the risk of burnout is less. Because like I said, you can be burnt out in every single specialty, right? Because if the systems and the powers that are above you aren't letting you practice the way you want to practice, aren't letting you take care of your patients the way you want to take care of them, you're going to feel that way. So to my colleagues now, right, I want to just kind of talk about some of the things I did. I really had to ask myself, all right, what am I doing this for? What am I doing this for? Who am I doing this for? And what can I envision myself doing? And that's when I really started to make the change, and, really started understanding, hey, I love medicine. I love being able to take care of people, but the fact that I'm limited by who I can take care of just because of proximity is a problem for me, right? And it was becoming such of a problem that it was starting to build and build and build. And that's when I said, I need some way to be able to kind of, teach and, educate and care for the masses as much as I possible. And that's why we started, doing, the videos. And that's why we started doing the blogging. And that's why I eventually did the podcasting, right? Because I realized that a part of what was holding me down, holding me back, was this need to really want to help more people than I was just able to help. And then helping utilize, social media and everything else to kind of expand the message along. And again, I thank my coach for that, because again, that was one of the things he instilled in us, right? How to get out of the box of medicine, right? That is suffocating you, right? Because for a lot of people feel suffocated. A lot of people hate. Again, and I talked about this. a lot of physicians who are in the burnout process, feeling the burnout, it's not like they're quitting, right? They are not quitting. They are still taking care of your mom, your grandpa, your grand. They're still taking care of family members. They're just not doing it in the most efficient way possible, right? They're not doing it in the most happiest state possible, right? So if you had to choose, like, hey, I got to choose Dr. A, who's extremely happy, loves what he's doing, has no experience of burnout, and he needs to take care of my grandma, or physician B, who's sad, hates that they even have to come into work, dreads the drive into work, can't wait till they leave and clock out for work. Like which physician do you want taking care of you, right? And so that's all I ask, right? So it's just to kind of understand, like, yes, this is a problem at hand. This is a problem that affects a lot of people, right? Again, I'm not gonna say everybody, but it affects a lot of people from that standpoint there. So moving forward, when we talk about, some ways to kind of help, decrease your feelings of burnout, like, I think it's important to understand that, you have to take care of you first. Because if you don't take care of you, if you don't address what you need out of this life, which we call medicine, right? Like, you're going to be in trouble. So understanding who you are, understanding what your needs are is going to be the first step, because that's how you're going to be able to go say, hey, you know what? Now that I know what my needs are, how am I about to go and, fulfill those needs? Right? How am I about to say, like, all right, I know I need to be able to do this, and that with my life while doing medicine. Let me make sure I'm doing that so everybody else is well taken care of. And then when you go on and really acting on it, as a physician, we're so selfless when it comes to our patients, but we're not selfish enough when it comes to ourselves. Right? We don't take care of our own selves. We don't get our own doctor's checks. We won't seek a counselor when we're grieving. We won't do all of these things that any other time you would tell your patient to do. We don't do any of that stuff. And because we don't do any of that stuff, we are putting ourselves in harm, and eventually we're putting our patients in harm. And if you had to say, like, is your goal to put your patients in harm? Of course, the answer is going to be no. So you have to take care of yourself, right? Be selfish, right? Be selfish. Understand, when you're hurting. Understand when you're depressed. Understand when you need to just get away. I was talking to a colleague of mine when I suffered the broken fibula. For those who may not know, I suffered a broken fibula chasing after my son. When I suffered that broken fibula, I was out of work for about 5 weeks. When I tell you the last time I had to think about my longest vacation was in between graduating from residency and starting my job. Now again, most physicians aren't taking a whole month off, but when I think about like the long, like, I think the longest stretch I've been out of work is maybe like a week or so, right? But it comes so few and far between that I can almost remember when I did it. And understanding that, like, oh, you know what? This break is actually good for me because I kind of need to get away. I kind of need to refresh, kind of need to re-energize. And it was such a good experience. I was like, okay, I got to make sure, like, I actually start instilling these times, right? So instead of saying, like, oh, I'll just take a day off here and I'll be back. Like, no, maybe take 2 days off. Maybe take 3 days off. Maybe take a whole week, right? And don't feel the burden of, like, oh, if I'm gone for a week, I'm going to have so much work for me when I get back. Don't worry about that. Just take your week off and enjoy your week. And then understand if the work is there, the work is there. It's not going anywhere. You are going to have to do it regardless. So might as well enjoy your week off while you're doing it. So be selfish, right? Understand who you are, understand, your needs, and then that's how you're going to fulfill the patient, right? Like, that's how you're going to avoid this process and these process again. I call it a process, right? Avoid this process of burning out, right? Because it doesn't happen overnight. It beats you up when you're a medical student. It starts chipping away when you're a resident. It really hits home. But for some people, it gets sped up. Some people, it gets slowed down. But it eventually does it because just unfortunately, the way our system is kind of set up to do. So, again, that's my thoughts, right? And I don't actually talk longer than expected. That's my thoughts on, burnout and, what my personal experience with burnout and, what I think you should do if you're starting to experience that, right? Be selfish. It's okay, right? Because if you don't take care of yourself, again, how are you going to take care of others? So, and I typically ask my guests, how is what you're doing, helping to empower others to take better control of their health, right? So, and I'm usually we're talking to the Lunch and Learn community, but this time I'm really talking to my colleagues here who I know listen to the show as well. Understand that if you don't give yourself the power to take care of you, no one will. Right, so being able to take care of yourself always starts with the person themselves, right? Like they have to be able to. I tell my patients, you have to be able to say, yes, I want to get healthier. Yes, I want to do better. Right? If you don't do that, if you don't, whether it's verbally, whether you're writing it down in a book or a journal, like if you don't like outwardly say, yes, I want to do this thing, it'll never happen. You guys have a great and blessed week, and we're going to see you next week, guys. Thank you for getting to the end of the show. I am your host, Dr. Barry Pierre, host of the Lunch Learn with Dr. Barry, and this is another amazing episode that we like to bring to you week after week on betterment of empowering yourself for better health today. If you have not had a chance, please go ahead and subscribe to the show. If this is your first time listening, if you already listen and you've already subscribed, make sure to leave me a 5-star review because your support is absolutely important in keeping the show moving as it is. And if you have not had a chance and you want to check out today's show notes, always head over to lunchlearnpod.com. That is lunchlearnpod, all in one word.com, and you can get the access to my show notes for every single episode, but especially the one you just listened to. And I'm gonna see you guys next week. You guys be blessed. Bye.